I call this meeting to order. This is a regular meeting of the Northfield Public School Board. Today is Monday, June 10th, 2024, and the time is 6 p.m. This meeting is being live streamed and recorded. The recording of this meeting will be posted on the district website as soon as possible. Welcome members of the community here tonight to observe the important work being done on behalf of all school district stakeholders. Dr. Hellman, we have some items in the table file. Can you update us?
Yes, we have several items in the table file this evening. We have some appointments, increase, decrease, change in assignment. We have 2 resignations. We also have the employment agreement covering the period of July 1, 2024 through June 30, 2026 for the custodial union. And finally, we also have the end of year enrollment report. Those are the items that are in the table file.
Okay, thank you very much. If there are no objections, we will add these items to the agenda as we move forward. Is there a motion to, is there a motion to approve the agenda as presented? Okay, moved by Jeff, second by Ben. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Okay, motion passes. And do we have anybody sign up for public comment? Okay, that's item 3. We'll move on to item 4, which is announcements and recognitions. Dr. Hillman, do we have any?
Yeah, we just have a couple this evening. First of all, we want to congratulate. This has been a really great year for our athletic and teams that compete. Yesterday at graduation, Shane Beyer announced that 19 of the 37 high school activities advanced to some form of their state tournament. And so this week, our high school girls golf team qualified as a state competitor. They compete on Wednesday. Baseball won the section as well. And they will play on Thursday, at 12:30 in Chaska. And so congratulations to both of those teams for advancing to the state competition. We also had 315 students who graduated from Northfield High School yesterday. I thank the board for their participation in that ceremony. Some really inspiring student speakers. Really appreciated the addition of the school song at the end. That was something that was new this year. So congratulations to Shane Beyer, Rico Bourne, assistant principal, Becca Bang, assistant principal, for shepherding this class all the way to graduation. We wish them luck as we move forward. And then finally, just for the public here, we did hold a work session prior to this meeting from 4 to 5:30, where we really discussed the dilemma that faces our community in terms of childcare and how the school district's role in that, and if there's a larger role that the school district can play. So just want people to be aware of that productive work session that we had from 4 to 5:30 today. Those are our announcements for this evening.
Excellent. Thanks so much. Right, we're on item 5, which is items for discussion and reports. First up is a legislative wrap up with Dr. Hillman providing a recap of the 2024 legislative session.
And I'm going to be very brief here in terms of what I've provided for you in the packet are the 2 items that I have that are reviewing the legislative session so far. First, you have 2 different files that are from the lobbyist for MASA, the Minnesota Association of School Administrators. Those are the documents that really go through each of the highlights. I'm not going to go through all of these. In fact, I'm not going to go through any of them. I'm going to let the report stand on its own and ask if board members have any questions. The other item that I gave to you is the slide deck that the Minnesota Department of Educational Governmental Relations team is providing to basically to regions across the state. So last Wednesday, Ado Shuni, who is the Governmental Relations Director for the Minnesota Department of Education, Carleton alumni, I might add, gave the presentation, and quite a few things you'll see in both of these recaps. There's a lot of technical fixes, but not a ton of things that, compared to the last legislative session, not a ton of brand new things. As we have done last year, we have a spreadsheet from MSBA that gives all of the new required legislation, and then there's a time frame with it. We've asked MSBA to add on to that. We will plan to continue to take each one of those items, do what we're supposed to do to be able to execute and implement those items as we move ahead. I would say the biggest area that we were really looking to was some technical corrections with the READ Act. There are a number of technical corrections with the READ Act and some modest changings. Well, some greater flexibility in funding in some ways and some more directedness in funding in some other ways. But I gave the reports to the board. It's, again, people are still sorting out just a couple of weeks later, all of the different things and what they mean for us and what does that translate into our actions. I'd stand for any questions that people have. If there are things that people would like me to specifically look into more and give you reports, I can certainly do that as well.
Very good. Board members, do you have any questions for Dr. Hillman on this item? Thank you very much.
Ben did have one.
Ben, you have a question.
Just out of the MDE slide deck, I know it's fairly lengthy, but anything stand out to you in particular that would be of, interest?
I think that the thing we were looking at, because it's in our immediate need category, is the technical fixes for the READ Act. So by way of example, they did adjust some of the funding to allow a greater capacity that you can use the funding for more things, as long as within what you are able to spend money on from your literacy plan, you are able to use a chunk of money, around $30 million for that. The other area of funding that was changed was there's $31 million that is intended to be direct compensation for teachers who are required to be trained this year. Now, everyone is still learning about this because there's a variety of questions that were at what is compensation, right? Is compensation actual checks? Can it be used to reimburse the district for previous stipends paid? Could it be time? There's a number of those questions that we're asking. In addition, there's some questions about the people who have already been paid in districts who have been trained. For districts like ours, who are embedding the training during the workday, what does that mean if the stipend, an additional stipend is the only option? For the people, there's another phase of professionals who are required training after this money. So will there be additional money to pay those people down the line? Those are the kinds of questions that we're asking. What we know has to happen is that we will have to come to an agreement through a memorandum of understanding with the Northfield Education Association about how to spend the money. So we are required to come to a consensus and through a memorandum of understanding with the union to determine how that money is spent. MSBA and Ed Minnesota are getting together to determine what is a model template for that. So I would say those are the areas that are the biggest. That's the biggest thing I've been looking at right away.
Anyone else? Comment or question? Okay, thank you very much. Item B, Policy Committee Recommendations. Dr. Hellman will present the Policy Committee's recommendations on policies 507.5 and 806. The board will be asked to approve these at the July 8th board meeting.
Policy 507.5 would be a new policy. This is a policy that has been recommended by MSBA for any school district that has a school resource officer. So as you may remember, there was some statutory changes very early in the session related to school resource officers. And this policy is MSBA's attempt to take that legislation and turn it into school district policy. So essentially, the policy is really reflecting what the new legislation is. It provides a definition of a school resource officer. It includes the contractual duties. So when you contract with an agency to have a school resource officer, it identifies some things that must be in the contract. And then it also talks about the new training requirement. And so this is the first reading of this one. This is new. This is MSBA model language. And so they are recommending Terry Morrow from MSBA, who you all know, strongly suggests that any district that has a school resource officer adopt this policy. So that is our first one. The second policy change is something that is coming through the policy committee. And so this is 806 crisis management. This year, just more so than in the past, I had heard some questions about threat investigation or threat assessment in the district. And so when we think about that, we have just done a few explicit changes, one of which would be in this policy, where we want people, if they are concerned about that and they look to our policy page, you would likely go to crisis management. And you can see the statement that we've written: student safety is a priority in our schools. All threats of violence are immediately and thoroughly investigated by a team that can include, but is not limited to, school administrators, a school resource officer, other law enforcement or emergency services personnel as appropriate, and other district employees as appropriate. The crisis management plan includes an outline of the district's threat assessment procedures. So for those, we don't publish the crisis management plan outside of the district, I think for obvious reasons, just to make sure that we're not giving those protocols to folks outside of the system. But we've inserted, we had a number of other checklists for other kinds of threats, but not necessarily a general threat assessment. So we have added that to the crisis plan. We're directing it to folks in the policy to assure people that here are the people who are involved in investigating these kinds of threats. So it is an attempt to take something that we've had a process for years, but to make that process as reasonably transparent as we can, without giving too much away about the process. So this one is something that came through our policy, been something that I recommended based on conversations with both families and staff. I'd be happy to answer any questions or take any feedback.
Any questions on either policy? Okay, Amy?
I have a question about the school resource officer policy. It's just more of a general, I know we have a contract in place already with the school resource officer, and I'm wondering if you've compared the policy to the contract in place just to see that they're aligned or not?
Yes, we have, and we have some work to do. So we are working, starting to think about our next contract for the school resource officer with the city of Northfield. And we'll be developing, in the past, the city has presented us with a contract. This time, we're going to look at developing a contract that is based upon the policy and working with attorneys who have written these kinds of policies for other systems. So it's nobody's fault. It was just the way that we've rolled the contract forward over time. And so we'll be doing something new with these items embedded.
Will there be an overlap of time when this policy is in place and the contract's in place? And do we need
Yes.
to worry about that?
There will be an overlapping period, and I will find out if we need to worry about that. This is new, so I don't know the answer to that.
Thank you.
Anyone else comment? Okay, Jenny?
Thanks, Claudia. Yes, I have questions about both policies. School resource officer policy first. Just to clarify, our contract is not with the individual resource officer, but with the police department, correct?
Right, it's with the city of Northfield.
Oh, with the city of Northfield, okay. And so with that in mind, then the 7 contractual duties that we see in this policy, is there going to be more detail listed regarding each one of these 7 in the actual contract?
That's a great question. Would you like to see more detail than what's in the policy?
I guess I was mostly concerned with 5 and 7 because that's a very serious, identifying vulnerabilities with our safety when it comes to safety in our schools, and that's huge. So, and that's just the basic statement here, which I understand because it's only a school policy. But then, yes, to see some more detail with that on how that's going to take place in their contract. And then also, number 7, enforcement of criminal laws. That's also quite big. And so, to provide more detail regarding that also in the contract.
Yeah, the contract, this would guide what's in the contract. Obviously, what will be in the contract is much more than what's in this policy, right? It'll be the number of hours that how much are we paying? For example, who is the backup if the school resource officer is not on campus, or is off duty for a day. So we're just getting into that part. I just started to talk with Ben Mardig about that a week or so ago. And so we're just getting started on it. We are leveraging Mick Waldsberger from Squires Waldsberger and Mace, I think is Squires Waldsberger and Mace. There are school attorneys. He has written some contracts that include this kind of thing for some other school districts. So we're going to leverage what they have learned in other districts as well. So we'll take all of those things into account as we put together a draft contract.
And then who is responsible for the payment for the required training?
Yeah, our understanding is that the police department is, because it's what the law says is it's the employer that is responsible for paying for the training. And so we're not the employer, we contract with the employer for a series of services. So my understanding, based on the initial read of the new legislation, is that the police department and the employer of the individual would be responsible.
Okay, I would just make a note then to make sure that that's in the contract as well, the responsibility. And then for the crisis management policy, in the added section that we have in section 2C, when it states all threats of violence, does that include verbal and the actual acts of violence?
Yeah, I think the question is whether verbal or written would rise to the level of what we consider to be a threat. We would investigate that. So let's say there's a social media post that rises to the level of being a threat. We would investigate that to the best of our abilities. So it would cover both of them in my mind, but are you asking for some additional details there?
No, I just wanted to know if it also included the verbal or both. And then also, and then what would the steps be, I guess, that our staff would use in determining if or when law enforcement is contacted?
Yeah, I think that that's a great question. And first of all, we would think about the age of the student. We would think about the specific threat. We will collaborate often with the school resource officer on anything that's a threat, unless it is something that we have had experience with multiple times before, and they have indicated that is not. Every one of these is a little bit different, but we have continued to gain capacity through experience. And so in terms of whether to call the school resource officer, it is a judgment call, right? Based upon the building principal. What I would say is that almost always at the middle school and high school, the school resource officer is involved. And more often than not in the elementaries. I can only think of a couple of times where we have not felt, because of the age, because of the known ability for a young student, a very young student, to carry out the threat, where we have not initially engaged the school resource officer.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else have a question or comment? Okay, Corey?
First, I'd just like to thank the board members who serve on the policy committee. I know it's a heavy lift, having done it for a couple of years, and certainly when we introduce new policy, you have to take it very seriously. So thanks for that effort. Concerning policy 507.5, the school resource officers policy, just a quick question. I know students often serve, well, they do serve on many committees. I was curious if this was seen by any students when it came through.
Yes, we have a district youth council. We have a couple of district youth council members who are assigned to the policy committee, and our district youth council representative was present at this particular meeting.
Good question. And then Matt, I wanted to come back and ask about, often these model policies, especially one like this, would pull language directly out of the statute.
Yes.
Were you able to find out if these items 1 through 7 came directly out of statute? In other words, having an item that says enforcement of criminal laws, do we have wiggle room to change that language or omit it, or, where does that fall as an example?
We've started to get into that, but we have not completed it yet. So we will be able to complete that before the next meeting. So we've started to look at the statute, but we didn't get to that detail yet. I apologize that we didn't get there before tonight.
Anyone else, question or comment? Okay, Amy?
You just made me think of another question. With enforcement of criminal laws, I know there are instances where students misbehave that we can handle it with our own citizenship handbook, but that same misbehavior might cross the line into criminal law. So, is this assumed that any time some student, I don't know, pushes somebody or whatever it might be, that it then becomes a criminal law, that it will automatically be handled by, through the criminal system, or will we be able to retain some of that within the school district system?
So that's a great question. And what I would say is that if you look at the policy, there's a part of this that I'm trying to find it right now, where it indicates that a school resource officer cannot be used simply to enforce the school district's policies. So the way I would say is that for discipline, right? So moving forward, if you think about our student citizenship handbook, which we have a work team starting tomorrow to review, it's a staff team tomorrow. The places where we would move forward with the enforcement of criminal laws typically, right, would be in those cases where in the student citizenship handbook, it says police referral. So that it's outlined in the student citizenship handbook what infractions of the handbook are given as a police referral. So I would say, now, are there other spots where there potentially could be? Sure, there could be, but it's very specifically noted in each infraction, if you will, or occurrence within the student citizenship handbook, what violations would prompt a police referral. And that would not change at this point unless the student citizenship handbook were to change.
I understand what you're saying. I'm just making sure, I mean, because this is such a general statement, it could be read that any criminal law, but I think I'm just nitpicking here, so.
Well, and, just to piggyback back off of that, I, would like to hear regarding policy versus contract, right? So the policy, which may be tied to law, has certain requirements, and in this case, they're being called duties. And then the contract obviously would not go against the policy, they
Right.
has to be informed by the policy. I know we've had a practice before of inviting the resource officer to help with an investigation or in a situation where the student may need to be interviewed or even charged. And with this case, in the scenario of the officer witnesses a fight, say at the high school between two kids that maybe are 18 at the time, what would that look like? Because the duty here is that this person is enforcing, but our practice might be that the principals handle that and don't invite legal action. So are those things that maybe are gonna go away and the officer has to
I think,
enforce law, assault?
I think the hypothetical question that you bring forward is a valid one. And it would be about what is, the investigation would be taken care of by our school principals and the assistant principals if the school resource officer is invited to assist with that. If the school resource officer is on site or in the vicinity, I would expect that they would help, right, diffuse the situation. And then the determination afterwards would be, was there an infraction or was there a violation of law, right?
Mhm.
And then the principal would first investigate in the situation that you described, very likely the policy then would also say police referral. So in the situation you described, I think the police referral would happen whether the person with the resource officer was there or not, because in that case where you're describing an assault, the determination is that there's a police referral.
Okay, thank you. Any other comments or questions? At this time? Did you have one, Jeff?
Kind of off of your question there in a sense. So if you had, two individuals, let's just say they're both 18 and they end up with a fight, the principal's there, but it's kind of like, I don't know if somebody doesn't want to press charges or do anything. Doesn't that kind of just stay where it's at?
Yeah, I think that
I'm sure there's a better protocol, legal protocol to follow. So I want to make sure I say that, but
Yeah, I think you raise a fair point in terms of there's a difference between a police referral and being charged, right? So we may make a police referral, then it's up to the police department to determine from the evidence, was there a crime committed? And if there was a crime committed, then you're right, in certain circumstances, people do have some agency as to whether they pursue those charges or not. And what I would want to, I'm just going to also bookend this by saying I'm being very careful, doing the best that I can answer the hypothetical questions, knowing that every one of these circumstances has nuances that could change everything that I just said. So the hypothetical is a good and interesting discussion, but there are no two of these that are the same, including, did it rise to the level of what would be considered to be a criminal assault versus what we might consider as an assault right here at school? Because we have a violation of the student citizenship handbook that may not necessarily be, even though there's a police referral indicated, it may not rise to the level of criminal activity.
and with that in mind, by no way am I encouraging fighting. So
That goes without saying, Jeff.
Thank you very much. Okay, item C is the superintendent focus areas end of the year report. Superintendent Hillman will present the end of the year report, 2023-24 focus area.
I'm going to let the report stand on its own. I think that what we did this year, I would love feedback from board members about this. In the past, I'd give you a couple of updates a year. This year, I gave what we deemed to be quarterly updates, depending on how you define quarter, right? As you look at this final report was about 5 weeks after the third quarter report. So we can think about the frequency, but my hope was that board members then got more information about the pursuit of the focus areas and other responsibilities throughout the year. So I'd be happy to answer any questions, but I think the report stands on its own. You've seen most of it already at least a couple of times.
Again, thank you. Any questions or comments for Dr. Hillman? You do, Amy?
I am just wondering what thing that you've done this year that you're most proud of.
There's lots of things. How much time do we have? I think that as I look through all of these items, there's lots of things to be proud of. I wholeheartedly, with all of my being, believe that reading is a civil right and that's something that can help raise people from poverty. And that I also believe that in this state, we have not done as good of a job as we could have in literacy instruction. So I am proud of the steps that we were ahead of the READ Act. And I am proud of the work that we have done to implement the READ Act moving forward. There's a lot of discussion in the state right now about technical details of implementation. And I have taken it upon myself at every gathering where people are complaining about the technical details of implementation to remind them the why. That teaching children to read is the gateway to all sorts of success. It improves students' mental health, it improves their career earnings, it gives them options for everything that they want. And so I think that I would say so far that would rise to the top for me.
Okay, our next item is the fiscal year 2024 audit engagement letter. Director of Finance Val Murdistorff will present the proposal from Clifton Larson Allen LLP audit engagement letter for the audit year 23-24. The engagement letter establishes the parameters and fees associated with the annual audit, and that is required by statute. This item will be an individual action at the next board meeting. Val, do you want to present at the podium or at the desk?
I'll just do it here because it's real quick. This is pretty standard language. They increased their fees about 5%, which is pretty standard across this that we've seen that across the other districts and what they're seeing. And I would say the only thing of note is there's an additional charge of about 2,500 or not to exceed 2,500. There's some new auditing standards that they're required to do that will require some additional work looking at our software systems and kind of network and IT internal controls, verifying that the data is that we're not able to manipulate things in a technology fashion. So that's some additional work they're going to be required to do. So there's additional fees for that. But otherwise, everything else was the same as the prior year, just about a 5% increase.
Okay, very good. Any questions or comments for Val? Very good, thank you.
Yep.
Yeah, item E is our fall 2024 bond referendum, and Superintendent Hillman will update the board on the informational campaign and highlight some of the upcoming events.
Give me 1 second to get my events calendar up.
I'll plug that in.
I'm just gonna, oh yeah, I can plug it in. It's a good idea.
Yeah.
Close enough to plug it in. Okay. So this is our external bond referendum learning opportunities, and I'll zoom out a little bit so that people can see the items that we have done since the last time and tell you some new items that are coming in. So as we look back, when we combine both the internal, those are for our staff only internal presentations. We presented it at every building. We presented it at a number of committees. And then with the external items, we are at about 38 events that we've been at so far. So that would include just providing informational leaflets. It would be giving presentations. It might be tabling. So what we've had over the last couple of weeks since the last time that we met, we've had we really limited in the last couple of weeks of school. But today I did a presentation to the Northfield Lions Club. That was a great presentation, great questions, really engaged group, probably about 15 people there or so, I would say. You're going to see we've added some other items here where there's some, this is actually Books and Stars, not Books and Stars. We'll correct that. So Books and Stars is a community education activity that brings together quite a few people. We're going to have information at those events. The third Thursdays, the next third Thursday option is at June 20th. And again, that's downtown. We're on Division Street between 4th and 5th Street. That's a tabling event where we simply have a table and we're offering information to people who are interested. We are working with Growing Up Healthy to do some work on evenings in the park. So evenings in the park are There are, I believe, 3 different locations throughout the city where there are these specialized events. And we'll be working to provide, that will be more of an informational leaflet or flyer kind of event. You can see the books and stars again as we move forward. Our next tour, I would invite everyone to come, is this Saturday, June 15th from 9 a.m. to 11 a.m. And just remind people, it's about a 2-hour tour. And you enter at door number 10, which is by the gymnasium entrance. And you'll meet us in the media center. So that is our next tours on June 15th. That's this Saturday. And then the next one following that will be July 8th. So these are the events that are coming up. We are also working to start shifting now that the school year is coming to a close. We have not been providing a tremendous amount of information via our social media platforms. And in the summer, we're going to shift to providing reminders and links to the website there. We're starting to take the drone footage that I've shared with you to consolidate those into short 2 to 3 minute clips of some of the challenges that we face and the solutions that the bond intends to solve with those. So those are our next items coming up down the line. And again, we've been having, I think, good participation. There's been good questions, good curiosity. And so those are the items that we've been doing so far. And we'll start the schedule. We're starting to schedule the fall tours. We're going to be working on some of that tomorrow.
Okay, very good. Board members, do you have any questions for Dr. Hellman on this item? Okay, Amy?
I would like to hear more about the intergovernmental township meeting.
Yeah, I'd be delighted to talk about that. So the intergovernmental township meeting was held on May 15th, was held at the Northfield Town Hall. And so the intergovernmental township, I told them, I wish they would have invited us to this years ago because super fascinating. I'm just learning a lot about township government. There's certain city government pieces, county. So there were representatives from Greenville Township, Northfield Township, Bridgewater Township. I understand that I think Waterford Township usually has people there, but they didn't this time. There were representatives from Rice County. There was representatives from Dakota County. The Rice County Sheriff was there. There were city representatives from Dundas and from the city of Northfield. And each jurisdiction gave a short update. There was a lot of talk about gravel in this time because they're working to do these items in the summer and talking about other projects. There's some great idea sharing. One township that has a, basically a recycling day that they provide. And that was something that was really interesting to the other townships. So really cool to be able to hear what was happening in those townships and the things that those elected officials were working through. Then we had a chance to present the bond referendum information, and there were some really great questions and some positive feedback. And really the thing I took away from there is, one person really talking about, how he wanted to make sure the school district continued to be very successful because his grandchildren were coming. And yet that he wanted to make sure that I helped remind people that, when you are driving in rural Northfield Township, that, basically every mile of road that you drive pays about $12,000, in property taxes toward a school project like this. And so just, really, it was a really interesting way for this person to say, just please make sure that people, understand how it impacts the ag community differently than it might people who live in the city or own a business, et cetera. And so that offered us an opportunity to talk about the ag to school tax credit that came forward a few legislative sessions ago. It was one of all of the events are great, but that was one of the better events that we did just with there's probably about 20, 22 people there. And they had good cookies too. That's always a positive, right?
Very cool. Okay, Jenny?
I just wanted to come off of that update regarding that meeting. How many townships do we have in the school district?
I think it's 13, if I'm remembering correctly. Is that if I'm looking at it needed, because we reached out to every single one of them.
And you only had 2 or 3 participate out of the 13?
So this was a standing meeting. This was the intergovernmental. So they meet regularly. Regularly, maybe quarterly, I think they do. So we have contacted the clerk of every township within the school district and have offered an opportunity to present or to answer questions. We have had some feedback very directly from some township clerks that were very gracious, but they said they just have so few voters of ours in their township that they didn't think it would be, worthwhile. We do have 3 direct presentations set up, Greenville Township, Castle Rock Township, and then Bridgewater Township. Those 3, Northfield Township had been interested in a presentation directly to there, but I think almost all of them were at this one. So they decided that the intergovernmental township meeting was a reasonable substitute for them. And so that was what they wanted to focus on. But to my knowledge, we've heard from some, yes, some no, thank you. And I think there might even be still a few. I mean, we've reached out several times. Is there anybody Anita did the contacting for me. Are there anyone that we've not heard from one way or the other? You don't need to name who they are, but okay, so we've heard from everybody so we are gonna go give presentations to the places that had said, yes, we'd like to have a presentation.
Thank you.
Terrific. Did you have a question, Ben?
And Matt, can you remind us, I know we've done some kind of direct mailing outreach, a couple of those, and do we have any planned, what's that timeline look like into the future?
Yeah, so we're starting to look at everything we've been doing obviously is voter information right now. Now we're getting to the point where we're gonna start seeing some of the things that we're required to do. There's some required mailings. I would anticipate, so far, if you count the one that we did before the board voted to move forward, we've done 2 mailings to every resident in the district. We would plan for at least, I believe we'd probably have at least 2 more. Probably not more than 2 more, but for sure 2 more. So those are the the direct mail we've learned is important. It costs us money, but there are people who just aren't able to get the information other ways. And it's part of we are calling this the No Stone Left Unturned campaign to make sure that everyone who wants to have access can have access. And so I think the direct mail is an important part of that.
I wanted to hear, I was able to be present at one of the informational, what I'm thinking was a informational flyer giveaway at the Dome.
Yep.
And that looked like not just handing out information, but engaging
Yes.
with individuals. Is that what some of those others that you called informational flyers, would they also be not just handing out flyers, but somebody there to answer anybody's question?
Yeah, so there's 2 different, I'm gonna pop up the tabling, because there's a tabling component and then there's a flyer component. So when we look at the tabling component, should come up here. Oh, I gotta come to the table. Sorry about that, wrong one. So this is what our setup looks like for a tabling event. And so what we have is this spinner. It's amazing. It draws people in. And the spinner, there's 6 spots. You can spin again or a choice. And we have 6 nonpartisan voter-related questions that we invite people. So it's things like, when was the first presidential election? More women vote more than men, true or false? There's some multiple choice. We have specific questions for very young children. So a young child, we will ask, do you know how old you need to be to vote? And they'll say 18. And we'll say, can you tell us how many more years until you can vote? And we've had one little guy who ran around in circles he was probably 4 years old, ran around in circles for about a minute and a half and came back and had the right answer. It's really delightful. I mean, it's been fun. And then we ask about a bonus question, which is true or false. The Northfield School District will have a bond referendum on the ballot in November. We ask, there's a little more to it. And then of course you get a Smartie that we got on super clearance at Target after Easter. And so people can get a little Smartie, and it's amazing how this thing will draw people in. And then we just simply ask people, are they aware of the referendum? And as you can see, we have maps, we have tax impact, we have an informational flyer, we have a QR code that they can use to get to the website. So we've done this approach so far at the, what's the new Home and Garden show name? Well, what used to be the event formerly called as the Community Market Fair. Yes, the Community Market Fair, which was at the Dundas Dome. Really great event. Lots of people there, lots of people who engaged, people who've heard about it, people who hadn't, and people who had opinions. And then this setup you can see directly is from the 3rd Thursday event. So we'll do another 3 of these. We'll use the same operation at Crazy Days. And I'm sure there's going to be other things that we'll use it at. Then we take something like the Northfield Community Education Center Carnival. And at the carnival, lots of people, but we just simply want to make sure people are aware of it. So we have it's printed, take a 8.5 by 11 sheet of paper, cut it in 4s. And we have just a little back and front flyer that we've got 3 versions of it. So if it's a music event, we've got one that focuses on what the bond would do for music programming. There's a general one. There's one that focuses more on athletic programming, depending on the event. And so at something like the NCEC, when people bought a ticket, at the front, they were given just a copy of the, of the leaflet. At the fall play, or excuse me, in the spring play, when you came in, you got your program and you got, you know, a leaflet that was specific to the arts. So those are the two examples. One is more of a, you know, giving people, there's QR code on the back of the leaflets. Again, trying to give it to people at events that the school promotes. And then also things like this that are more community-wide events where we can more engage with people. We certainly aren't, what we're really just trying to do is engage people who would like to engage. If they say, yep, we're aware, and we say, oh, have a great time. Hope you have a good time. But there's been some really good engagement. The third Thursday event is also a good event because there's a lot of people there just enjoying downtown, and people will tell us whether they want to hear more or not, and are respectful of that.
Absolutely. And then with the tours, would you say you mostly have unique visitors on each of the tours, roughly speaking, or
Oh,
you feel like
yes.
it's a good mix of returners, or most of them people that have already been on a tour? You'd say they're all mostly unique?
The vast majority are people who are coming on their first tour.
Mhm.
We have a handful of people who have been return
Sure.
tour folks, but most of the people are first time tour folks.
Great. Excellent. Lots of opportunity to hear about it and be informed. Any other questions or comments? At this time? All right. Item 6 is our consent agenda. Is there anything anyone would like to pull from the consent grouping for separate consideration? Okay. Is there a motion to approve the consent grouping?
So moved.
Moved by Corey, second by Amy. Okay, thank you. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion passes. Item 7 is our items for individual action, and we have 4 items, 3 of which are resolutions that Anita will help facilitate that vote on. Board members, please remember to turn your mics on and speak into it during the time of your vote so that Anita can hear your voice and record it in the minutes. We have item A, the sale of district property. The district has received an offer from Lance Manti to purchase district-owned property parcel number 17.11.3.75.021 in Dundas. The property appraisal report and the purchase agreement are in the packet that is published publicly on our website. The offer of $18,000 aligns with the appraised value of the property. I'll take a motion first, and then we can discuss. Is there a motion to approve the sale of district-owned property parcel number 17.11.3.75.021 in Dundas as presented? Okay, moved by Ben and second by Jen. Okay, any discussion on this item? Any questions, Jeff?
Just to understand that based on the appraised value, that both parties are in agreement on that number and that they're okay with the agreement.
Yes, the agreement that was presented to us by the purchaser Lance through his realtor Jesse Steed. I did speak with another local realtor, also had our attorney Jay Squires take a look at it. We feel that the purchase agreement is fair. The value of the property, it's not a buildable lot, so we feel that the appraised value is important to use. And then in addition, the purchaser has agreed to pay for all of the expenses related to the sale, the transfer of the property, all of the recording and all those things that have to happen. So it is mutually agreeable, Jeff, should the board vote to move ahead with it.
Anyone else, question or comment? Okay. We have a motion. All those in favor say aye.
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 Opposed? Motion passes. Okay, next is a resolution to approve the bond referendum ballot language and call the special election. At the March 11th, 2024 regular meeting, the board directed the administration to prepare a bond referendum for November 5th, 2024. This resolution finalizes ballot language and calls a special election as directed. So the legal title is Resolution Relating to Determining the Necessity of Issuing General Obligation Bonds and calling a special election thereon. Is there a motion to approve the resolution relating to determining the necessity of issuing general obligation bonds and calling a special election thereon as presented at the May 28th, 2024 regular school board meeting? Okay, moved by Ben. Second. All right. All right. Is there any discussion or questions? I see none, or did you have a question?
Yeah,
Jeff?
a little bit of, for clarification, can you talk a little bit about that then?
About the
Yeah, just
resolution?
that resolution, because there's like, well, the two from B and C. So what the big difference between B and C?
Okay, let me just make sure I've got what you're asking, Jeff. 1 second.
So what's the for and what's the against then for B here on the?
Oh, for B, okay, yeah, there's two different ones here. So
Right.
B and C. On B, a yay vote would approve the bond language as presented and calling the special election, that resolution. That sets off the piece of us sending that to auditors and formally getting the ballot components prepared as we had been directed before. So on B, a yay vote is to move ahead with the ballot referendum language as presented. And all of the other items in the resolution.
Good. Anyone else?
Yeah, I would just, so far, and I don't know about, well, it doesn't matter on C necessarily, but.
C is a separate
Yeah,
resolution.
separate
Talk
deal,
about that in a
but
minute.
suggest a roll call vote for B and C and just for.
So it's a resolution, so Anita's gonna
Okay,
facilitate that.
okay,
roll
and
call
then
vote.
just for my state opinion position, I mean, I will be a no on both of those because I was not for the resolution to begin with, so that's just a.
So they're not related, B and C, but we're gonna do a resolution roll call vote right now on B.
Okay.
Which is the ballot language. Have any other?
Well, they
comments
are
or questions?
related because they're both about the.
No, C is actually something different. C is about, action item C is a resolution certifying population estimate. This was a change in the law that gave more community ed funding. But in
Okay.
order to get another $6,000 for community education, we need to pass the resolution for C. So C is a separate resolution from B. B is solely about the referendum, Jeff, and C is about, community education funding that's newly available to us.
Okay.
Any other comments or questions? All right, Anita, will you facilitate?
Butler,
Aye.
Gerwitz,
Aye.
Miller.
Aye.
Nelson,
Nay.
Cornell,
Nay.
Gonzalez, George.
Aye. Okay, so that resolution passes. Thank you. Item C is a resolution certifying the population estimate for the 2024 payable 2025 levy. The Minnesota State Demographer's Office has released the 2023 district population data, and due to population growth, Minnesota community education programs now qualify for additional general community education revenue. Northfield Public Schools qualifies for additional funding based on the pay 24 calculations. This will generate an additional $6,815 for general community education revenue. The statutory deadline for board approval of this resolution is June 30th, 2024. I'll take a motion first, and then we can have any discussion if there is any. Is there a motion to approve a resolution certifying the population estimate for the 2024 payable 25 levy of Independent School District 659 as presented? Moved by Corey, second. Thank you, Amy. Is there any discussion, questions about this additional funding to community ed?
I would just want Val to talk. Can you talk about bringing this forward, how this came to be?
Absolutely. So we were notified by basically the state community ed. They did an analysis on all the districts that were eligible for this additional funding. And really what it boils down to is there's some language in the way their levy dollars are calculated for community ed that are census based. And so because the census is every 10 years, they lock that number in. But now this allows us to have the state demographer basically update it so we can get a little additional revenue for community ed just by taking this resolution. And the 6,000 was what I calculated based on what the current formulas say.
Great. Any questions or comments from the members? Okay, Anita, will you facilitate a roll call vote on this resolution?
Aye.
Gerwitz,
Aye.
Miller.
Aye.
Nelson,
Aye.
Cornell,
Aye.
Gonzalez, George.
Aye. Thank you, resolution passes. Okay, item D. Item D is our final resolution, and it establishes dates for filing affidavits of candidacy as the first step in the process leading to the school board election to be held on Tuesday, November 5th, 2024. The board is requested to adopt the attached resolution establishing dates for filing affidavits of candidacy. Upon adoption of this resolution, the notice of filing dates will be posted and advertised in the Northfield News according to the deadlines indicated on the election calendar published by the Minnesota Secretary of State's office. Affidavits of candidacy for the 4 school board vacancies may be filed at the district office beginning Tuesday, July 30th and ending Tuesday, August 13th. This election will be held to fill 4 vacancies with 4-year terms. The terms of Corey Butler, Amy Gerwitz, myself, and Noel Stratmon expire on January 6, 2025. Is there a motion to approve the resolution establishing dates for filing affidavits of candidacy as presented? Okay, moved by Ben, second by Jenny. Thank you. Any comments or questions? Okay, Jeff?
Yeah, I have a question, just kind of a point of information to try to figure out. What is the statute for, now, does this include the 331 school or 32, or is this private schools too, as far as when you can, who, based on state statute, who really gets to pick that 2-week window and how much leniency is there between district to district?
You want to know where the dates came from?
Well, yeah, based on, well, the dates, yeah, first question, good point, where the dates come from on this one, but what is the leniency for dates, or is that etched in stone somewhere?
Yeah, that is etched in stone. It's from the Secretary of State.
Gotcha.
So there's, the Secretary of State each year will, they publish this window. So for example, we're not a school district that hosts a primary.
Okay.
So there's a set of rules for districts who have a primary, and then there's a set of rules for districts who don't have a primary. So these are the directions that every single school district who has board seats available this year must follow.
Right, thank you.
Anyone else? Question or comment? No? Okay, Anita, will you facilitate a roll call vote of this resolution?
Aye.
Gerwitz,
Aye.
Miller,
Aye.
Nelson,
Aye.
Cornell,
Aye.
Gonzalez, George.
Aye. Motion passes. Thank you. Item 8 is items for information, and we have an end of the year enrollment report in the table file. Dr. Hellman will review the June 2024 end of the year report this time. Thank you for plugging in.
Takes me a while, but now I have a routine. So in the packet you have, it was a stat, it just took us a little bit to be able to get this for you. So that's why it was in the table file. So this is the end of the year enrollment report. And I want to be clear that it is not the final enrollment report because there's a number of cleanup processes that take place actually between now and I believe January to make sure all of the students in the state are put where they're supposed to be based upon how much time they spent in each district for those students who spent time in more than one district. So on the first page, you will see the entire year's worth of data. And I want to point to the bottom right of this first page. And so remember that there's a grand total, and then there's the number below which says excluding early childhood and part-time ALC students. And you'll see that that number for the end of the year enrollment report was 3785. The number right below it is really important because that is the projected enrollment that Val does for the purposes of estimating our revenue. And so that was adjusted in the December adjusted budget. And so 11 more than the 3774 projected. I believe if I'm doing my math right, that's a 0.29% variance. Way to go, Val. A 0.29% variance is pretty darn good. And when it's to the plus, it's even better. And so we will, of course, there's some other machinations that will happen between now and the time all of this is settled with the state, but we have a pretty good history of being pretty close because Val does a great job with the enrollment projections. So I think then also, as I had committed to, these were the end of the year class sizes at the elementary schools. I've committed to making sure that I just highlight this at each meeting. You'll see they were largely unchanged from the previous month. And so I just want to make sure that we highlight those areas as well. We're anticipating some of the higher levels next year to be a little bit better for a variety of different reasons, including some new funding based upon a way that we were able to recode some special education expenditures to generate more general fund revenue. That's a positive thing. But this is how it ended at the end of the year. And I'd be happy to answer any questions that I can about the enrollment report.
It looks like none at this time. Thank you for that presentation.
My pleasure.
All right, item 9 is our future meetings. They are Monday, July 8th, 6 PM here in this boardroom, a regular board meeting. Monday, July 22nd is a workshop for us in the boardroom. And a Monday, August 12th, another regular board meeting in this boardroom. Okay. This is all the business that we have for tonight. Is there a motion to adjourn? Okay,
Motion.
moved by Jeff. Second? Mike Moore? Okay, all those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. We are adjourned.